Thomas, I think I can start recording the meeting for now. Right?
Okay, I already started doing that. Do you want to do that?
Oh, you're already doing that? Okay, that's fine. I just see a button in there. So okay. Gaurav just joined it. He's still on his audio to show up. All right. Hello. Hi,
hello. Yeah, hi Thomas. Sorry for that. There was some problem at my end. Okay. So, okay. Hello, everyone.
Okay, Gaurav, thanks. You made it. Okay, so I think we can start the meeting. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dynamic Configure Brigade weekly meeting. So last week we shared some updates about the development items in Sprint 2 of the Loon release, and also discussed a few topics. I think we can continue our updates this time. And as you see, I have brought up to the Scrum board with the Dynamic Configure Brigade. Let me make it a small window. So I guess why don't we start from this list and give an update on each of the items here. For record purposes, I have put this list under the Dynamic Configure Brigade meeting page. So I have created a entry in the table. Probably we can start on the table and go each of the items separately. So first item about the RPC abstractions and generated code cleanup. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a patch for review, and those APIs needs to be merged. So while I was trying to rebase, I see that I cannot build it. So I have sent out an email if we can rework the auto generation of the code and not depend on the old abstractions. We can like build and merge this APIs. Only then I can deliver the implementation of that. So like. Okay. Yeah, so that review, and so the thing is like the auto generation needs to be reworked based on the patch. So if we can do that, it will be great. Other than that, I didn't have much time last week. I was out for most part of the last week, so yeah, that's what I have. And I have a little bit progress on the like the transaction event consolidation, and working with Utah on the device synchronizer design. So conversations going on that.
Right.
I have a question, Sarah. For your review, right? The implementation of the RPC registry, as you're planning to do that implementation part as well.
That's done. I can't put it up for review because, like this is not merged. RPC registry means the dynamic config implementations, right? How to do the brokerage, right?
As we discussed last meeting, right? The RPC registry will be moved to Yang runtime, right? You have an implementation, right? Your plan is to.
So the API is being moved to Yang runtime. It is just the API so that the auto-generated code can call that. If it is part of dynamic config, Yang tools will have a dependency on dynamic config during compile time, which is not what we want. So we have moved the APIs into Yang model, but the implementation still remains in the dynamic config manager. So that's done as well.
Okay, that's good. Because yeah, so that clarifies my question. I told Gaurav that RPC registry need to be in Yang runtime, so it's only the API in the Yang runtime. The registry implementation itself is still in dynamic config.
Yeah, it is just this that yeah. If we had the APIs in dynamic config service, Yang tools will have a dependency on dynamic config for compilation, which is not what we planned. So that should come up independently. So we moved the APIs into the Yang model. So just the register and register APIs, so that the auto-generated implementations can do the register and unregister. Invoke still remains in the dynamic config service.
Okay, so is this sentence accurate? Basically, API of RPC Registry is moved to Yang runtime, right? Implementation still remains in the dynamic config service.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. So, Henry, do you have any other thoughts on the code generated code cleanup? Or...
Yeah, that's good, Ahua.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Sitera. So we go to the next item, the changes to preserve ordering of children in the store. I guess, Sitera, you probably haven't started working on that yet, right?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. Okay. And next item, the device synchronizer. Yuta, can you give an update on that?
Okay, so on the last meeting we discussed that we would like to fill in the dynamic config document about that section. So that part is in. So if you have folks have some time, take a look at it, and if that seems sufficient or not.
I'm sorry. To which part is already done?
So in the last meeting we discussed that we would like to have a page in the dynamic config requirement document or something, and that part is filled in. So if you yeah, I pasted a link on the chat. So if people have time, please take a look at it and see if that's sufficient, or we need to fill in more details on that kind of feedback. And so, and I've started sketching out the structure of the code and thinking about what needs to be done, and several questions arise, and we are having discussion on the mailing list. So if people have input, please add on to that thread, and that'll help how to design these things and so on. So
okay.
So yeah, that's about it. Yes.
Okay. So regarding the timeline wise, do you see it's within this sprint or the next sprint to have a scope implemented, or?
So I'm hoping equivalent to what we have today with the active. I've got the exact netcom active something. Hopefully we can get that done within this sprint, and other real synchronization part probably need to be on the next sprint or later.
Okay.
The expectation, yeah.
Got it. Okay, that's good. I think we're in a good state. Okay, thanks. Any other updates, Yuta? Or?
Nothing from my side. That's it.
Okay. The RESTconf RPC development, Henry, can you give an update?
Yeah. The last week we did not do much changes in that area. We still need to be integrated with the new dynamic config API.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And for this, I think we can probably shoot for like either this week or next to get it in there, right?
Yeah, sure. So Sasara, last week we discussed we need to make some adjustment, right, on the API, dynamic config API, right? Are we still working on that?
Yes, these abstractions needs to be merged for me to put up the implementation.
How about the interface? We mentioned we need to use resource ID, right?
Okay. Just that change I can probably put up, just one line change. Yeah.
Oh, good. So are we gonna make the change on the interface and then submit the interface first, or?
Okay, I can do that. It's just a line change,
okay.
so I thought I'll submit the implementation and the interface together, but I can submit the interface right away.
Yeah, but
okay.
so just so that I understand correctly, so Tara, you will make really quickly change to use the resource ID in the interface, right? But then before we can actually merge these changes, there will have to be a couple of things that are done in unison, which is the change to the generated code, right?
Yes.
And that will still break the implementation, but it should not break the build, right? And then you can submit your implementation of the RPC dispatching mechanism, the RPC registry, and that will restore.
Yeah.
That should restore the functionality at runtime as well, correct?
Yeah, so there are three things. Dynamic config API I can submit.
Yes.
Dynamic config implementation to be complete. The Yang runtime, the Yang model APIs, that needs to be merged.
Yes.
So,
So
those two are interdependent. Just the dynamic config API I can put up. That's just a line, one line change.
I see. Okay, so that's not blocking anybody else. But so I'm right now primarily interested in making sure we can push the abstractions for the Yang tools, the RPC abstractions for the Yang, make sure that the code that gets generated is consistent with that. That needs to happen quickly because otherwise that's blocking a number of other tasks, right?
Yeah.
Who do we expect this to do? Is this Gaurav and a team in India to make these changes, or I just want to make sure we have a reasonable handoff?
So, yeah, those APIs are in the Yang model. So right now it is build failing because the auto generation has a dependency on the old abstractions. So if we can get rid of that, those APIs can be merged.
Right. And so Gaurav, are you online?
Yeah, Thomas, I am there. Okay.
Okay, good.
So I need to look. Basically, I have not looked into that yet.
I see.
So maybe once I think Vinod put 2 questions on the mailing thread. So that was my query also, like when we discussed over here. So as I understand, like we are already moving towards resource ID, so that is good. What other changes are we planning as an abstraction? If we are already moving to the resource ID, then that was something which was used before also. So are we simplifying the APIs? That is what we are targeting over here?
Well, so if you look at the, go ahead, let's say that. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Okay, so those are 2 different things. The resource ID, that changes in the dynamic config service itself. But what we are asking is the RPC abstractions, which we have now moved into the Yang model. So there is a patch for review. The moving to resource ID is not the change there. We are cleaning up, simplifying, optimizing the abstractions that we had earlier. The changes are more. So maybe you should review that.
Basically, the query was about like during the registration, we will have resource ID based registration, or we will have class based registration. So that was the first query.
Vinod's concern was for the invocation. So that is different. That is based on resource ID. Registry is class based.
Basically, if invocation is resource ID based, don't the registration should also be based on the resource ID?
No, it is the design is to do it based on the implementation classes. So that simplifies a lot of things. So.
Sorry, I thought. Okay, sorry. I think I'm not on the same page. I thought registration is also resource ID based.
Oh.
So my understanding is wrong then. Okay, so invocation, right?
Yeah.
I think we all agree it's resource ID based.
Yeah.
What can we do the same for the registration as well?
So the only reason why we wanted resource ID is for the uniformity of the external interface that is in the dynamic config service for applications. So that is the only reason or real value in using the resource ID there. So invocation is in that scope, and we have kept it like that. The register unregister is primarily like, in the Yang registry. It's a different set of APIs, and so there is no uniformity question, and we don't really have a need. We don't have a real need for the resource ID there. So why would the auto-generated implementations construct a resource ID out of, the information that they have? It is much simpler and cleaner if we use the implementation classes for register and register.
Okay, I would differ on this basically.
Yeah, so what is it that we should look at?
Okay, so basically what I look at it as, like, currently the application when interfacing with dynamic config system, it's all the abstract way they interface based on the resource ID and the data node. So even the application interface with dynamic config, in my opinion, should be based on same.
It is not in the dynamic config anymore. The register and register. It's a different set of APIs.
The register API will be still with dynamic config?
No, it's in an RPC register interface itself, RPC registry interface itself.
Who is going to maintain this registry? Is it dynamic config or someone else?
It is dynamic config.
Yeah, so that is my point basically. So basically, I see it as resource ID and data node based registration would be uniform, and it would be same as invocation also.
I'm confused. Okay, what would be the purpose? So basically, the RPC registry is effectively just a registration of a callback, right?
Right.
And so, what would be the purpose of specifying what would the resource ID be required for the registration? Do we expect to have multiple different callbacks for the same class, but for different resource IDs?
No, basically, Thomas, what I am looking at it as, like, in the future, when even the action and all come into picture, it will be like not at the root.
Can you repeat what comes in the future? I missed that.
In Yang 1.1, we have construct call action. So initially, RPC was used to be there at the root level. With the action coming into picture, it can be there at any level in the hierarchy.
Okay.
So basically, to register that, maybe the path-based registration is what would be suitable.
Could you explain a little bit more? Like, I'm at loss. Like, why would still we need a resource identifier to identify the action? So could you elaborate a little more on the RPC actions?
Basically, it is the same. Basically, action can reside anywhere in the schema tree. So initially, the RPC was only there at the root level in the module. With Yang 1.1 in the future, it can be there anywhere in the schema hierarchy. It doesn't mandate it to be there at the root level. So what level it is, maybe the resource ID is the best identifier to identify the path to that particular action.
So effectively, then you would then register the adding the resource ID would help be able to track multiple different callbacks for the same action, but for different levels of the data node hierarchy.
When you say multiple different callback, Thomas, are you talking about the augmentation scenario, routed RPC scenario? Because that is the place where multiple.
No, I guess I was just simply saying, to me, the RPC registry is merely a callback tracking. So an application says, here is a callback. You need to associate this callback with this basically RPC type. And I guess for that, I thought the only thing that would be required would be effectively the service interface, which would be the RPC service, yeah, effectively. Now, you're suggesting that in not just the RPC service is required for registering and non-registering, but also a resource ID to basically be able to add, so an application then has to add multiple callbacks multiple times for different parts of the tree. I'm confused. That's the part I'm not following.
Okay, basically, it will be per RPC1 registration. That is what I am looking at. So if there are, say, for example, 5 RPC for an application, so he need to register all 5 of them. So all 5 would be with the different resource ID.
You are going to generate 5 interfaces, right? If there are 5 RPC definitions, you will generate 5 interfaces, right?
Okay, the point is currently the interface generated is single only.
Okay. Oh, for 5 RPCs, 1 interface is generated, or 5,
yes.
5 actions, 1 interface is generated?
And the action is not there currently. That is Yang 1.1 construct.
Sure.
In Yang 1.0, we only have RPC. And with the current implementation, the service class have all the RPCs in it.
In the same class, yes.
But I looked at the generated code. I had the Yang file. There were multiple RPCs defined, and I could see multiple interfaces generated. So, am I?
No, there should not be multiple interfaces.
There is. I looked at it. So, every RPC. So, what is in a Yang file, that is translated into a service interface. So.
No, Sitar. Actually, as per my understanding, what I know is basically the Java APIs corresponding to RPCs which are generated is that all reside in a single service.
So what would be the file name in that case? What is the file name? The Yang file names?
The module name itself will define module name suffix by service.
Yeah. So I recall seeing that, and so that the whole point of, okay. So today, those generated, so today the generated interfaces from the compilation process, they share no common ancestry, and this was why we added the notion of RPC service as a token interface to be able to designate these things and to be able to have some common basis for treating these generated interfaces. So, but okay, so today you generate one interface class for each effectively RPC definition for all of the actions or methods inside that RPC clause in Yang. You generate one interface which has all of the methods defined in it. We need that. So are we going to stick with that approach, or are we going to now start breaking apart each different sort of method to its own interface? What did I hear you say? I mean, I'm getting a little bit confused.
No, actually, that change, we can decide whether that is required or not. But today's date also, like, there could be, it is not mandatory that a single, as of today's date, we are following the ONOS stuff, wherein we have a single service and a single manager. So it has been generated from that perspective.
Okay.
So that is what we were following.
Do we want to continue to do this with the action, or was there some different change that you envisioned as a result of supporting Yang 1.1?
With the action coming into picture, we will continue to do that.
Okay.
But like I am also not sure on this angle whether there is any advantage to generate one interface per RPC and action, or whether we should continue to do it the way we are doing it currently.
I mean, my thought was that I actually would prefer to see it consolidated. I don't see any benefit for breaking it apart. But then again, I'm not sure what convolutions the Yang language itself will introduce. But I was under the impression that what we would do is continue to generate one interface for all of the RPC methods that were defined in the Yang.
Okay.
Simply make sure that the code that we generate, the interface code that we generate, extends RPC service, which is a token interface, thus giving us the ability to treat that interface as an RPC service for purpose of registration and invocation. And so this is what this patch set is about, is to be able to simply say, I have an interface right here. Actually, I have an implementation of this interface, and I would like to register it, and I would like to unregister it, and I would like to be able to retrieve the implementation that implements this RPC service specific class. So that's what the RPC registry is about. I simply do not see where the resource ID at all would come into play for the purpose of specifying a callback, deploying a callback, or retrieving a callback associated with a specific service interface. Okay. Where would that come? How would that be important is what I don't understand.
Okay, when we are registering, basically a single service interface would have multiple RPCs within it, right? So when
you say multiple RPCs, just let's call them it's methods, right?
Yes, right.
Okay. Multiple methods.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it has multiple methods within it. Now we have to call a specific method. So when we are registering based on an interface class, how are we planning to maintain like method level details for it?
So the RPC input would provide the method name.
RPC input will provide a method name. Okay, that is something which is again like, because when we talk about Yang terminology, right? RPC name is separate, and the input is only supposed to carry the input data, what is there for that method. So this is something like which may confuse the users. That is also we need to think of.
Can I echo, Gaurav? Can I echo what you are asking? Hopefully that can make people understand what our question is. So Sarah and Thomas, my question is this. Okay, echoing what Gaurav is asking. Suppose that the invoker, right, try to invoke RPC by passing in the resource ID. My question is, for the broker, how does the broker find the RPC service, which is a callback function?
So
okay. So that's my right. So if
right, so the broker is a binding between an interface class name and an implementation instance, right?
Yes.
And basically anything in that RPC service interface, any methods that are defined by the RPC service interface are now addressable. How they're addressable during invocation time?
Okay. So
for that we can use invocation time. For that we can use resource ID. We can use name. I don't really care. And I do agree that it ought not to be part of the RPC input. That should be part of the actual invocation itself. However, for the purpose of registration, I don't see where the method name itself comes into play. Of course, when we're giving an object that implements a certain interface, that object itself effectively is a callback for all of the methods defined by that interface.
I see your point. I agree. It just from implementation point of view. So if I were to implement this dynamic config, my difficulty is that if my registration is class-based, but the invoker gives me a resource ID, I still don't understand how I can implement.
So the resource ID encapsulates the interface name itself, and what I have in my registry is a class implementing that interface. So I can introspect and understand, what class handles that service.
Okay, hold on. So you, from an implementation perspective, you extract the interface name from the resource ID, pass in from the invoker, correct, Sarah?
Yeah, so that's why I originally asked if we can pass the service name itself. So that's all I need,
Exactly.
even if you are giving a
Exactly.
resource ID.
Yeah, you see, Satara, if the invoker pass in service ID and the registration is service, I can understand that, because the invoker and the application who register the service agree each other. But now what I'm getting lost is now the invoker pass in resource ID, but the registration is still class based.
Registration is class based, but
how
from the resource ID, I need to figure out the service name. The resource ID essentially is pointing to the service interface. So I will have to extract that information.
Yeah. So if the RPC registration is also resource ID based, you don't even need to do that cancellation. You can very easily find the callback function. That's what I'm trying to highlight here.
But yeah, it's just a choice that we have to make, but we don't really have any use of having that. So my preference would be to have service based registry and service based invocation. That is the simplest form of it. But for uniformity, if we are keeping resource ID on the invoking side, we can keep it, but still I don't see.
Yeah, first of all, it's not only for the uniformity, because if RESTconf, for example, right, I implement the RPC as an invoker, it's very difficult for me to find the service name, especially when we talk about the action in the future. That's why we use resource ID. Okay.
So when you say it is difficult for application to find, do you think how would I be able to extract it? I thought the last part of the URI itself is the service name, and that's how I am going to extract it. So why would it be difficult for the RESTconf application to extract it?
Because for RPC,
Henry, let me clarify on this. The last thing of the URI would be the RPC name. It won't be the interface name. A single interface contains multiple RPCs, so we will not have the interface name there in the resource ID anywhere.
Interface name in the resource ID anywhere. But the RPC name has to be part of the interface name itself, the RPC itself, right?
RPC name will be there.
The interface name is the module name, and the module name will be part of the resource ID, right? How can it be lost?
Basically, the interface name is something which you can figure it out from the module name. Basically, you need to call again some method to the conversions. You need to remove the suffix. All that is something which needs to be done. Then after doing that, you will be able to figure out the interface name. So the APIs of Yang tools.
But it is a derivation of the module name itself, right? Maybe there is a suffix of service. That's what you're saying, right?
There is not only suffix, Sitara. Basically, we are following the ONOS coding guidelines also while generating the Java class names and the Java coding guidelines also. So basically, the Yang,
I mean, I want to pull a break here. It seems to me that this is just way too complicated. I mean, all we are talking about is an abstraction for tracking callbacks. How we're right is if we assume that a set of methods are grouped together in the Yang definition, and as that such a group is going to be then expressed in the Java world as an interface which descends from RPC service. Are we on the same page with that regard? So we will generate from the Yang code, we generate some interface which extends RPC service as a token interface. Are we on agreement there?
Right, Thomas. Only thing is that interface is a combination of multiple RPC. That is what you are.
Multiple RPC, i.e. in Java, this is going to be expressed as multiple methods, correct?
Right. Correct. Correct.
So to me, basically it's a group of actions or whatever you want to call it. I don't care what terminology Yang uses, but basically it's going to be a group of actions that will be expressed as a group of methods, and way of doing that in Java is an interface.
Right.
That interface needs to now share some common base, which is called RPC service. So far on the same page, right?
Okay.
Okay. For invoking those things, in order to be able to specify which interface and which method, and then to be able to pass it some data for the invocation, we're going to use a couple of mechanisms. We're going to use the notion of RPC input to hold the data, right?
Okay.
Now, question I have is then the RPC name itself, which is the method name and the name of the interface, should not be part of the RPC input, but instead should be expressed as a resource identifier, right? The resource identifier should be structured so that it can be used to address which interface and which method of that interface is to be invoked, correct?
Okay, there is a slight difference over here. Basically, the resource ID points to a RPC, but resource ID will not have information about the interface. Interface is basically the logical grouping what we have done.
I understand. Okay, I understand.
Okay.
But the RPC name is unique such that it will land inside that group of methods, right? A resource ID will be uniquely identifying that method.
Yeah, that particular method. Yes.
Inside its own namespace is unique. Yes.
Yeah. Right. In that namespace, it is unique. Yes.
Yes.
What do you mean
yeah.
In that namespace? So.
What I mean, inside the Yarn module, the RPC name is unique. So,
okay, Henry, just a slight thing here.
You have something that's totally unique, right?
Not mandatory, Thomas. Basically, first thing is young RPCs today's date are not globally unique. The names are not globally unique. The name with namespace is
the leaf
globally
name is,
unique.
but the whole resource ID has to be, no?
Yes, with the resource ID, yes, it is unique, because for that particular resource ID, there could only be one RPC with that name, because resource ID itself carries the namespace and the location in it.
Okay, so my question is then something clearly the leaf is what will be locally unique and will identify the method. But something else up in the hierarchy of the resource ID has to land us inside the group of methods inside that interface, right? Is there a portion of an RPC of that resource ID name that will help us bind to it?
Basically, we have the module name in it. From module name, we have to figure out the interface name just the way Yang compiler used to generate. So that is possible. Basically, the Yang compiler has to expose an API. That API, the input should be the module name and the output should be the service interface name. It won't be possible by dynamic config to do it by itself.
Understood.
Because, yeah.
So this is not
that way it is possible.
So this is not something that would be part of the schema metadata.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So what's the conclusion? Shall we still keep investigating on that? Because actually the implementation is ongoing. I think.
May I? Yeah. Sorry. May I suggest, Sarah, that's not to rush to submit the interface. Maybe as your original plan, you plan to submit implementation with the interface, right, as single submission, right?
Mm-hmm.
maybe we can code review interface with the implementation together. Let's see if we can, right? If we can all agree on the integration part. Because right now, what I'm not say we are not opinionated on one interface versus another, right? Last meeting we want the invoker to pass in resource ID just for the sake of implementation, the easiness of implementation. Now we raise this question on the registration part is also because if I were to implement the RPC in the dynamic config, I really have difficulties understanding how you correlate the invoker versus this service callback.
So
yeah, so
if
you can implement, I have no objection at all, right? To do the way you propose.
I guess.
Sorry, Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was thinking it for okay. So as an application which implements a set of RPCs, i.e., set of methods which are now expressed in that auto-generated interface class, I would like to just call one registration, right? That makes it simple. That alleviates the need for having code that does auto-registration. But if now, as an application, I have to, for every single freaking method inside that interface, I have to issue a separate registration with a separate resource ID. That is pain, and that is that if somebody changes the model, then I have to now actually, change the code, which in order to register that new method. Because if I don't, then the method will not be registered. It seems really, really convoluted. I think from a implementer, somebody had simply says, here is an object that implements this interface. Have a nice day. Please call these methods. All of these methods are now callable. Send them to this implementation class. One registration call simply says, register this thing that implements this class. End of story. That makes it really, really nice and simple from the application side, the application that provides the implementation. And we certainly don't expect, since we said we are going to continue to group it together inside a single interface, we certainly expect only one application to provide that implementation for all of the RPCs. So, because if we go with registering things by resource ID, I assume the resource ID is going to contain the everything down to the leaf name, which includes the RPC, i.e. method name, right?
Well, for action, that's the case. Yes. For RPCs, you just think of it's just like a method directed on the root, right? We can think of it like that. But you are right. You are right. More generically speaking, you're right. Resource ID is like a tree, is like a path structure. Yeah. And that's my difficulty to understand the implementation part, not the application implementation part. I understand the application will be easy, right? To use the current the RPC registration API that Sazera offers. Yeah, I just curious how to implement the RPC registration on the dynamic config.
Registration could be extremely straightforward, in my opinion, from the application standpoint. Here is an object that implements this RPC service interface, register it. That's it. And then when the application is deactivated, simply withdraw it. It's effectively a single operation to register a group of callbacks. And so from the implementer, whoever implements the RPC broker, sure, there may be more work to be done, and that's something that was going to be done by the dynamic config implementation of the RPC registry. There, some additional work needs to be done in order to properly track the binding between the interface and the implementation.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with Thomas. And to add to how we will do it at the dynamic config, the difficulty would be that if the resource ID is not directly encapsulating the module name or the interface name, Yeah, like that would be the difficulty, and Gaurav is suggesting that Yang runtime can provide an API. So it could be solved that way, but like, would that make things too complicated? I don't know.
So,
Okay, Thomas, I completely agree with you that the application life should be easy. It should be easier. If we look at the current generated code, right? That was the purpose of it. Basically, it just issues a single command, the application, and it needn't bother what happens at the back end. Basically, the registration, the model conversion, talking to dynamic config is all there in the generated code itself. And if there is a change in a Yang, the generated code also get changed. So that may be one more way to look at it.
I disagree with Gaurav. It is way too convoluted. I had a look at, like, what it is doing. It is unnecessary and way too convoluted. I agree that it is auto generated, but that is not at all clean in my view.
Convoluted for what? For whom, Ashitara?
Convoluted in the registrations, like,
Because for application don't see that at all.
That's fine, but under the hood, it's a very convoluted way of doing things.
No, because the point is, if we look from the application perspective, application is not even bothered what is happening there. Application is directly writing the business logic in the interface method. So that is rest everything is automatically taken care.
I already told, right? I understand it is under the hood, but I found it is a very convoluted and not clean way of doing, and some of the abstractions that we have are not even necessary. It's not in agreement with our translation of Yang to, like, what the methods should be. That's one thing. And if somebody have to handcraft an implementation, they have to go through all the pain that you have under the hood. So
can I suggest? Sorry, can I suggest?
Point here. Yeah. Can you please go on?
Sorry, Gaurav. Can I suggest that since we are now talking about really the coding level implementation details, maybe it's easier if Sarah put the code right as in the review, right? Then probably it's more effective. We can address this conversation, carry on the conversations as part of code review process, right? It's easier, right? Pointing to the actual code that we're talking about.
I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm not sure whether bringing the implementation into it is going to solve anything if you can't agree on the interface, right? So a few things we said we need to be able to do, and so maybe we know the auto-generated code should make sure that it generates things that descend from RPC service. So in order for that to happen, for that change to happen, the RPC service class has to be made available. So perhaps we can pick pieces from the, and I think we need to do that. That needs to happen first. And if you do that separately, that's fine by me. So perhaps if Gaurav and your team need to make those changes, perhaps you can just lift the RPC service, which is a token interface, from Cephara's patch and make sure that your code, the auto-generated code, generates classes which descend from RPC service. That's one thing that we need to do. Second, I think the auto-generation that's programmatic, so generation of code that does self-registration, I think that needs to be eliminated. If we can do that outside of the auto-generated code, we can do that through introspection, we can do it through other means, but I don't think that should be in auto-generated code because that reduces flexibility. So I think I would suggest we do those two changes at the same time. Make sure RPC service is a basis for all generated interface classes, and eliminate all of the code that's auto-registering the services. Then separately, once this is done, we can talk about the registration and we can talk about the invocation as separate and how to track the callbacks. I agree that Sitara could also maybe in parallel make changes to the RPC input and RPC output to make sure that those things do not contain the RPC name and RPC action. really, it should really just be, I guess, encapsulation of the RPC data.
I will fix the RPC input.
And I'm wondering then. I mean, what is RPC output today? Okay,
The output data and the message ID.
Okay, so for Symmetry, yeah, even though RPC input is effectively just a wrapper around a data node, I think we should still have an entity for Symmetry.
Yeah.
Is it so? Can we do it? Can we do it like this in a couple of smaller steps, and then that way we have at least we can do the things that we agree on, and then we can, once we have that, that'll unblock other things, and while we work out the things where we currently don't necessarily have an agreement on. Is that something we could do? Gaurav?
Okay, Thomas, so first thing is you want to eliminate the auto-generated classes. That is point one, right? And second thing, what you expect is the generated classes to extend RPC service. The two things, right? If I understand correctly?
Correct, yes. So I'm going to actually inverse it, yes. RPC service, the auto-generated interfaces need to extend RPC service token interface. Yes.
Okay.
That should be fairly straightforward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the second thing, if you can at least, I'm not asking you to remove the code. I'm asking you to suppress the code, because currently the stuff that generates the self-registration makes assumptions about how that registration abstraction looks like. Clearly, we're not in agreement what that registration abstraction looks like. And so I'm asking you to suppress the code so that we at least have something working, and then we can be discussing what the best way to structure the abstraction looks like. We may return later on to generating the registering code if that's the best way to do it, or we can implement the dynamic form of registration using introspection. That's also a possibility, and actually might be much easier to change, because if you decide to change the way you register things, you just change one class and you don't have to regenerate all of the models, right? There is, even though generating code automatically as a result of compilation is easy because machine does it, it doesn't necessarily mean we should put a bunch of code in there that does not necessarily belong there. In my opinion, the code to register things should not be in there unless there is absolutely no way of doing it outside as a utility. And I think there is a way to do it using introspection and reflection.
Okay, fine, Thomas. So this activity, shall I take it up now or after the open config? Because the resources are little limited over here now. So what do you suggest? We'll take this up now. I think this should not take time because it is only about the generated classes extending RPC service and this thing. So I think I will take up this now so that things can move on, and then I can then we can take the open config, continue with the open config.
Well, so my reasoning is as follows, because right now this is blocking Sithara's progress and blocking progress that, let's say that Henry and Sithara decide to work on this registration together, because we need to be able to work this out, how this is going to work, right? They can't really move forward until we have some working base that can make sure that the RPC service is in place. So perhaps the path that Sithara has there today can be sort of broken apart. So if you could just lay the foundation, maybe take a small detour with the resources that you have, make sure that the auto-generated code generates things that descend from RPC service and that abstains from generating code. Simply comment out the invocation of auto-generated registration.
Sure. Okay.
That would be fairly cheap to do, right? And you know where to do it, and so hopefully that would not be very expensive for you. And is that wrong?
Right, Thomas. That should not consume much time. That should be fine.
And then
So
only thing is I was worried, like if we could figure out the final solution, then we do this would be better. It should not happen that we again put effort to revert it back. But I think that is, since this is not that much time consuming, I can also do it now.
I think if you just disable it for now, leave the code,
Okay.
don't refactor it, just leave it there, saying as with the option to always put it back with a single command line, right?
Fine.
But what we do,
Fine, Thomas.
we do need the RPC service interface available in that Yang model package, and we need all of the generated RPC interfaces, the things star.service, to descend from RPC service.
Sure, Thomas. No problem.
So one question, Gaurav. When we sever that auto generation, that would remove all the dependencies on the abstractions, right? They are the only ones who are consuming those abstractions. My thought is that we would have the freedom to rework those abstractions when we suppress the auto generation of the registration, right?
That was my goal. Yes.
Yeah.
So this way,
fine. That is fine. I understood.
So hopefully we minimize the amount of work that your team has to do just to make this, to enable work that Sitara and Henry can work on.
Sure.
And I agree that we should, after that, make sure we have a discussion or maybe even a separate design session for the RPC service stuff, so we can address all of the concerns. Okay.
Just one suggestion: when we are designing RPC, we also need to think about a routed RPC, so that we need not to rework the things at future point of time. I think that will be again one important feature.
Agreed.
With the class-based, I guess, it should be scalable, but definitely we'll make sure that covers.
Yeah, actually, I have concern with that from class-based only. Okay, anyway, we can discuss it separately during the RPC design discussions.
Great.
Okay. Great. I think it's a long conversation, but we finally laid out some steps to move forward. Okay. Shall we move to the next topic and quickly go through the updates then? So RESTCOM patch support, I think, Henry, we probably have not started yet, right?
Yeah, correct. This is not a big item. We probably can submit the code review next week. This week we are not started yet.
Right. Yeah. And also on the
I go. Yeah. Just I have one point here. Henry, you remember like we discussed about put and post operation for the RESTConf?
Yes.
So maybe there was some change required in the post operation. Maybe you can look into it if it is already done. I am not sure.
The post operation, there is a issue with post operation that I fixed locally. The issue is that the current post behavior is not compliant to the RFC. Well, actually, sorry, I'm mistaken. The put is behaviorally right now identical to post, which is not correct. The put is one level. We talked about that. Remember a while ago, right? During the ONOS, that fix is locally available, and that is a bug fix that we will submit in our earliest possible time. Yeah. Thank you for reminding this. Yes, I do have the fix in my local environment. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one is the Open Config model compilation and integration. Probably Gaurav, can you have a quick update on that?
Okay. Basically, in this sprint, what we are working on is, first thing is the live compiler. So live compiler, two pieces we are working on. First thing is the GET APIs for the live compiler. That is one thing. Second thing is introducing the model identifier in the model ID. So that involves changes in the Yang runtime and Yang compiler. That also work is going on parallelly. And third thing is for the live compiler in the cluster environment, the support is not there currently. So that is also we wanted to work on. So that is about the live compiler, which will continue in this sprint also and in next sprint also. And open config also, we found around 7 bugs in the open config, out of which around 2 bugs are fixed. So the work for the open config will also continue till next sprint.
Okay. Quick question, Gaurav. On a live compiler, I guess I haven't looked at which approach you're taking, but how I envision that this would work effectively is the live compiler would effectively produce an OR file, an application, locally, and then could lean on the application subsystem to deploy that programmatically, to deploy that application. This is how it could be done effectively. Once you have the OR file, that from that point onward, deploying it is the same way, even if you build the application manually or on a fly.
Okay. As of now, Thomas, the code which is there does not generate a OR file. What it does right now is after compilation, it just registers with the Yang runtime, so that the REST-conf based device configuration will work. But what you said, maybe we can take it up that activity also after this.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess the reason I brought it up was because you mentioned that you don't have it working in distributed environment. This would be one way to make it easily work in distributed environment, because you don't have to worry about distributing it. All you need to do is just generate the Yang model. You don't even have to register it. You just have to generate the OR file, and basically you get to the same point as you would if you ran Maven or Buck on the project. And then from that point onward, you just deploy the OR file, and that will take care of distributing the OR file and model bits and everything else, and then activating them independently. And so the code, you wouldn't have to write any new code to deal with it. All you need to do is produce an OR file. That was my
and then
avoid work.
Yeah. Fine. And then to deploy it, basically that has to be done manually then, Thomas?
No. So this is where the live compiler would actually have 2 steps: produce an OR file and then call on the application subsystem saying, here is an input stream to this OR file, please deploy it. The same way like
maybe
deploy application.
Yeah, if you have some pointers wherein like this piece, I am not very sure in ONOS how it is done today's date. If you can give some pointers, that might be helpful for in this regard.
Yes, it would be basically calling the application admin system, where there's there's a method called install, which takes an input stream and gives you an application. So basically, it's a service that turns an input stream, which is presumably contains the OR file in it, into an application, and it makes sure that the application is now installed all over the cluster, and then you can simply say activate it. So yes, I can point you to it, but it's basically using the application admin service interface.
I will take a look at that then. This much is good enough.
The reason I mention it is really just I wanted to make sure we avoid creating a distributed mechanism if we don't need to.
Okay, fine.
I didn't mean to add work. I just wanted to make sure to avoid work.
Sure, Thomas. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so is the 3 bullets, the 3 bullets here capture the what we just talked about? Because I'm not quite familiar with the OR files, so I hope that I capture that.
Yeah, I can send an email, sort of at least providing a blurb of how it could be done.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be helpful. Yep.
Yeah.
One more thing, in live compiler, actually, there is an RFC which defines the way the devices should expose their Yang files to the outside world. So maybe not in this release, maybe in later down the line, we need to support that particular RFC so that the outside clients which are based on the standards are able to fetch the supported YANG in that particular format.
Correct.
So that we will do
and
maybe later point of time.
And also different versions of the YANG, right? So
right.
Okay. Do we need to do something for RESTconf in this respect? Or?
As of now, we can park this, but that is one pending activity in terms of live compiler. So right now, since we have some other priority task, so I have parked that point for time being.
Got it. Okay, that's probably a future enhancement for RESTconf as well, I would say. Yeah. Okay. So I think we reached the end of the list. So do we have any other items that needs to be mentioned around?
Apart from this, we are also working on some of the bug fixes which Naoki has encountered when he tried to use YANG tools. So those are the bug fixes what we are working on, and even while ACTN usage, some more bugs were found. So I think this version we will try to stabilize more the YANG runtime and YANG compiler. So that will be another aim what we are targeting in this version.
Yeah, actually, this is a very, very good point. Actually, in our other related activity in the ACTN development, we have been validating with YANG tools and also the YANG runtime module quite a bit, right? And there are some issues which also found and fixed. Yeah, so I think so far this YANG tools and YANG runtimes acts pretty robust, and I think it can handle most of the work as of today. But still, we need to go through some of the changes, small changes though, to make sure that it is as robust as it gets. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for the updates. Okay, so do we have any other updates to talk about? All right, going once. And okay, nope. So I think we are done for today.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks all for your participation. And I'm going to put up the notes onto the Dynamic Config Brigade wiki page, so you will see a record, and we can probably update it the next time.
Yep, and I'm going to upload the meeting to YouTube, and you can maybe link to it from your notes too afterwards.
Yeah, where do? Yeah, just send me the link, and I can.
I will do that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.